Hello, everybody. So welcome to English Without Borders Network webinars. We are very happy to see all of you, and we welcome you again to our series of webinars which we are conducting within our framework of the project English Without Borders. And we are welcoming the participants via Zoom and also Facebook. So all those who are joining us on Facebook live session, welcome to you as well. So please use a comment box to write your questions. And after the presentation of the speaker, we'll address all those questions to our speaker. And I would welcome also our Zoom participants to use the chat box to put your questions. So we'll just pass them over to our speaker. And today I'm very excited to present Judith Elliott, who is quite very well known in Tajikistan due to her big connection and big network she has built here during her stay in Tajikistan. So, and let me just welcome our famous Judith Elliott, who is one of the significant contributors. And today, Judith Elliott will be talking about communicative teaching approach in reading. So just to give you some information about Judith Elliott. So she's an English language teacher trainer who has conducted methodology workshops and academic writing classes in Tajikistan, the Russian Far East, and in Georgia. Most recently, she has returned to Tajikistan as a Fulbright Specialist, giving workshops on writing and lesson planning to access teachers, as well as online writing courses. So welcome, Judy, and I'm giving the floor to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. I see a lot of familiar faces and see familiar names. So thank you for attending my workshop. Okay, I'm going to get right into the slide presentation and I'll tell you more about. Okay, next page. Next slide, please. Gulnaro, can you hear me? Yeah, okay. So today we're going to talk about reading strategies, but I've designed the presentation to just address the kind of reading text that you have in your English textbooks. And not a lot of other kinds of reading. So one of the things that I've noticed in working with students online is the difficulty of them seeing the larger idea. So part of my focus is going to be on understanding the meaning of the text and putting what you're reading into a bigger picture, the larger context, and to help increase the content and the vocabulary. Next slide. Okay, before I begin, let's go to the chat room. I would like to hear from people about what their textbook is. What do you use in class? Some of you use Headway, I think. Some of you use Parvona and Samadin. This is this old textbook that comes from the Soviet time. I've been talking to one of the students. Does anybody else, can you type up some names for me about what textbooks? Yes, Iraqan. Okay. Anything else? Does anybody else use other textbooks? What about if you're from university? Do you have different textbooks at university? Do I hear anybody? No? Okay. Also, Boink. Okay, English for businessmen, that's good. Anything else? Anybody else? Any other titles? Okay, does anyone read a novel in class, even a short one? Okay, New English File. We have part 2 of Headway. Okay, good. Do you read fiction? Do you read fiction? Like, do you read even like, I know Zabo is on this, even more true stories? Good. Okay, that's good to see. Usually excerpts, okay. I'm interested if you ever read a whole novel, even if it's a short one. Like, does anybody read The Old Man and the Sea? It's often a very popular one. It's not, maybe not so easy, but okay. All right, that's interesting to me. All right. Okay. So one of the things that I want to focus on, the first topic, is pre-reading. In other words, before the students read, and don't just say, read pages 5 through 10 for your homework tonight. Okay, give them an idea of what they're going to be reading. And that's what I say, context and background. And the other thing is, it's typical strategy in class to do read and translate or read and retell. Instead of saying retell the paragraph, ask them, for the students to ask, what is happening in this paragraph? What is this paragraph about? So focus on the paragraph, but don't read and retell. What's the general idea of this paragraph in 2 sentences? Okay, and then jumbled paragraphs are particular kinds of strategies, and I'll show you later on. Next slide. Okay, other strategies. Give the students a paragraph from a text in your textbook, but you're going to have to type it up or put it on something where and take the first sentence off, just remove it, and then ask them to write the first sentence for this paragraph. So they have to read the paragraph and understand it, and then write the topic sentence. Then if you're reading a story, for example, even if it's an excerpt, ask the students to read it. Then put the events of the story on slips of paper or write it on the board, but in a jumbled order. So, and then the students make them work together in pairs and come up with the correct order. In this kind of strategy, it's really easier if you put the events on specific pieces of paper and cut them up and mix them around so that the students have to move the strips of paper around to figure out the correct order. Another strategy is to read a story, make up a dialogue, and act the dialogue out. The other strategy I would encourage, especially at the beginning of the text, when you're going to do the assignment, is ask them to read and make predictions. Look at the title, look at the pictures, don't read the text. Now, what kind of things do you think will happen? Yes, and Solomon Shope made a comment about reading theater, which is a very good idea. It's you have to have the text and the dialogue. Those books are out there, and you can make a dialogue from a story that's in your textbook as well. Okay, next slide. Okay, this is one of my favorite activities because I think pictures, they say a picture is worth 1,000 words. So you can use the textbook pictures or pictures you take from the internet. And before you start reading, show the pictures and discuss what the content of the picture is, asking the who, what, why, when, and where kinds of questions. Also, the other thing is, especially in your textbooks like Headway, there are a variety of texts that talk about different countries. So one of the other things you should have in your room is just a map of the world. So you can say, because I'm going to talk about this one exercise. Well, they're comparing 3 cities. You should have a map so that you can ask the students, point to these 3 cities. So having a map in the room is really an important part of putting things into context. Okay, next slide. Next slide. Okay, this is advice to a very busy teacher, which I know you all are. You have to plan ahead, because I can hear you saying, oh, where am I going to find time to do all of this? Get your students to help you. Look at the chapters and plan ahead like a whole month and say, okay, I'm going to do chapter 1 for the first week and chapter 2 for the second week. And especially if you're using Arakan, because there's not very many pictures in there, and they're very small and they're not very interesting. So assign students the responsibility of looking up information about the reading. For example, I'm going to talk to you about one reading from, well, Parvona and Simadin did the editing, but the original material is Arakan. And it's about George Bernard Shaw. And there's just one little picture of him and his face, but you should understand what George Bernard Shaw is writing about. So tell the students two students, look up George Bernard Shaw, what he wrote about, what was life in England like at that time. And okay, so then you're going to say, I don't have a printer, and how am I going to get these pictures? Okay, ask the students to put it on their cell phones. In this presentation, I Googled, and I'll talk to you about, I Googled and took pictures off the internet. A lot of the things that I'm doing in my writing classes, I take pictures off the internet for PowerPoints. So get your students involved. If you plan ahead, you say, okay, student A and B, you work on this chapter. Student C and D, you work on the next chapter. Next slide. Okay, so I am still advocating the use of maps to show what we're talking about. Okay, I did a lesson about indigenous tribes, and I wanted the students just to know from a map where they were living. Okay, so it's part of Borneo, and here's the map. Next slide. Okay, now some English teachers don't feel confident in their speaking, especially brand new teachers, giving instructions, giving feedback. So my advice to you is sit down before you do the lesson and plan questions. For example, we had a whole discussion online with my students about indigenous people. So the kids have a hard time understanding what does indigenous look like. Okay, so here are this particular group of people. They're called the Panan. And look at the picture. So what would you say about these people? Okay, type on the chat room. What can you say about them? They live on this island of Borneo. So it's relatively near the equator. Tell me about okay, they live a primitive lifestyle. Okay, what else? How else are you going to describe them? What do you think, how do you think they get their food? How do you think they get their food? Just looking at the picture, just looking at the picture. Okay, they hunt. Okay, yes, he's got a spear in his hand. So they hunt animals, they use spears. It's a warm climate, so you don't see they have much clothes on. Okay, they gather food by hunting everywhere. Yes, and they live in the forest. Okay, okay. So, next slide. Okay, so this is the forest where these Panan live. Okay, they use pointed things to hunt. Now, what do you think is happening to the forest where these people live? On chat, anybody have any answers? Here's the people right here, and what do you see? Ah, yes, they're cutting and they're selling trees. Okay, good. So it means that the forest, what's happening to the forest? We can see truckloads of, yes, deforestation, good, by cutting trees, wonderful. Destroying the forest, good. Okay, so do you see the questions I've asked? And they are getting a story before they actually read the text. Okay, that's the point of these pictures. Next picture. Next picture. Okay, now look at this. You can read a little bit. It's Stop Muram Dam. It's hard to read the Latin. D-A-M. Okay, if you look behind, there's a dam stopping the river or the lake. Okay, they are a strike or a protest. Okay, they're protesting what's happening. They're protesting pollution. Strike, okay, a little bit of striking, but it's more of protest. Protest is when they are objecting to something. Okay, yes. Okay, so they're protesting about what's happening to their environment. Yes, they're trying to defend their environment, defend their place. Okay, so what I've extracted from you is telling a story with pictures. So you can use the same strategy. I got these pictures off the internet. We were reading a chapter about these people, but I took the pictures off the internet because it's very well known about this group of people. And so it was easy to find them. So what I'm saying to you is the students will have a better understanding of the text that they read if you have a discussion about, through pictures in the beginning. Next slide. Okay, from Headway, level 1, page 71. Here's another strategy to use. First of all, you'll see it on the next slide, but I have a map. Okay, so teachers, if you use Headway, find a map and get the students to see where these three cities are. Maybe they know, but it's nice to see it on a map. And then ask some questions about these cities. Like, for example, you could say, imagine that you woke up one morning in one of these cities. You got up out of your hotel room and you walked down into the street and you couldn't speak to anybody. How do you know which city you're in? So they have to use some imagination. So in other words, before you start reading about these cities, ask them what their prior knowledge is. Imagine that you are walking in to the streets of one of these cities. What would you see? How do you know that you're in Mexico City or Mumbai or Tokyo? Yes, and there is some comparative, but first ask them to be visual. Imagine what it's like. And maybe you could have some pictures of these cities as well. So they would have to know something about the language, the alphabet. Remember, they can't make them say you can't speak. So they would have to look around. What about the architecture? What about the people's clothes? Things like that. Okay, and then, yes, you can ask, one of the participants said, we should find one similarity, one difference, okay? So you've already got them thinking about these cities before you do the reading. That's the whole purpose. Next slide. Here's the map, so you can show the different locations. Next slide. Okay. There's another lesson in Headway on pages 26, 27, and 28. Okay, again, the broader strategy, the issue that they're examining in the pictures and the text is some couples are looking to find a place to live. So, okay, can I have the next slide? Okay, so I got this picture from the internet. So I would use this picture to ask the students to examine what's going on in the picture. And ask them, what kind of things do you think this couple are asking? What's going on in the background? What are they hoping to do? Yes, buying a house, buying an apartment. Okay. And then what kind of things do these people, would they ask this guy who's got the tablet in his hand? What would they ask him? What's the cost? Okay, so use the picture and then go into the activity. Okay, next slide. Okay, now I can hear the problem of printing pictures. Okay, use the textbook. Print from the internet. You don't have a printer, put the internet pictures on your laptop or your computer. The other thing is you can cut and paste in a PowerPoint from the internet to your computer or to PowerPoint, or you can bring the picture on your mobile phone. So there's ways of getting around the problem of printing pictures. Personally, I like the paper, but I understand the difficulties you face. So there's other alternatives. Next slide. Okay. So I'm repeating myself a little bit. This Parvona and Samadin is the textbook. I'm working with one student and he took pictures of pages from this textbook. So he's in the sophomore year, second year of high school. So I'm not sure of the level. So if you're using this textbook, I thought about the same strategies. Plan ahead, give each student one reading to look up the background. And the other thing is, make sure you're asking questions in English. I know it's a big temptation to revert back to native language, but when you're in the class, you're reading in English, make the questions in English. Okay, next slide. Okay, so the text we're going to talk about, I gave you in a handout. So after the class, go to the website. There are 4 handouts, and the text that we're going to be talking about, I typed the whole text. So the things that I'm typing, the things that we're talking about, you can get as a handout. So I went to Google, and these are the kinds of things that I wrote into Google. Images of upper class 19th century English couples, because George Bernard Shaw is an English writer. He lived from about 1856 to 1950. Okay, so he wrote about England and the upper class. So I wanted some pictures about English society to show students. And that's why I Googled these things. So you have to be inventive. You have to give your students, if they are going to do research, you have to give them these kinds of phrases. I mean, on this particular reading, but you have to help them understand what to Google in order to get the kinds of pictures you want. Next slide. Okay, so I got this painting of English by an English painter. And believe me, it was random. I kind of knew what I was looking for, and this shows the inside of a bus. Okay, and this is the type of society George Bernard Shaw is writing about. So on chat, tell me about the people that you see in here. Can you tell me anything about the woman on the, let's see, it would be my left. She's sort of slumped over. She has a black dress, and she has a baby and a daughter, and she's like, looks like she's tired. What can you tell me about the differences in these people? Type on, Firuz, I can see you. Type on the chat. What do you see? How are these people different? Nagina Mirozova, can you? They're close. Okay, good. Oh, somebody says totally. Totally what? Totally what? Their clothes are different. What else? What else? What's different? Gestures? Okay, what about the expression on their faces? Whoever, different class of people. Century? Yes, 19th. Expression on their faces. Tell me about the expressions. The woman holding the flowers. One woman is standing because there's no calm environment. Okay, no, I want to know about the expressions. How would you describe the woman holding the flowers? Okay, is she angry? Okay, her hairstyle? Okay, she's not smiling. But is she upset? I don't think so. Do you think so? Okay. What about the woman in black? Okay, she's hopeful to have a baby. Okay, maybe she has kids. Where, if she has children, where are they? She's thoughtful. That's a very, okay, thoughtful. What do you think she's thinking about the woman with the dark dress? She looks worried. Okay. Or maybe maybe she got flowers from her students. I don't think the woman carrying the flowers is a school teacher. Okay, somebody said class. How can you tell the difference in class in this picture? Social class. How can you tell? How can you tell? Okay, from the clothes. Okay, which do you think is the poorer person? There's, okay, she misses her husband. Well, what can you tell me about the woman who's got her head is sort of reclined in with her baby and the daughter? This is okay. Those wearing dark clothes are poor. Absolutely. Yes. Okay. And probably the woman on the far right is from the working classes also. And no, she's tired. Would you say she's tired? Because it looks like she's half dozing. She's falling asleep. But the woman with the flowers, she looks like she's going for a visit. She's taking the bus to visit. And the guy with a black hat, he's upper class. Yes, the woman in the middle looks very fashionable. Yes, she's upper class. And the guy with the black coat and the black hat, he's a wealthy person also by the style of his clothes. Okay. It took us a little while to pull this information out, but you need, when you talk about George Bernard Shaw, to show a picture of English society so you can understand what George Bernard Shaw is writing about. Okay, next slide. Okay, so on page 87 and 88 in this Parvona and Samadin, or the Old Iraqan, there's this essay on George Bernard Shaw. And in the beginning, the teacher should read the introduction. This is what it is. And this reading is in your handout. George Bernard Shaw is one of the greatest playwrights and one of the most important representatives of critical realism of English literature. Okay, now, I looked at the book and the exercises. There's no discussion of what critical realism is. So if you say to the student, read and translate, or read and retell, he's going to just go right over critical realism without understanding it. So the teacher then has to look it up in Google, and I did. So critical realism, critical means to analyze, and realism is the way life is. Okay, so the picture that I showed you is Shaw is describing the kind of society that's in this painting. And that's why having a picture that goes with the text is really important. And explanation of the terms. This term is not defined, as far as I could tell, in the textbook. Next page. So you continue reading in the text, but the teacher or if for example, your students look this up, they could even teach about this. Shaw didn't show people in a flattering or a complimentary way. He didn't, and he talked about them. And this is what critical realism is. For example, in paragraph 5, Shaw wanted to make his ideas clear. He wrote plays to show his ideas to the wealthy classes. He used the stage to criticize the vices or the wrong things about capitalism. Okay, so you can imagine this, the woman who was carrying the flowers in this picture and the guy with the top hat. Suppose they got dressed up and they went to the theater, and Shaw was making fun of them or talking about their class in an uncomplimentary way. They would be pretty upset about that. So the teacher, when you're talking about the text, has got to help the students understand the information that is in the text and relate it to the picture. Next page. Next slide. Okay, often the exercises in Parvona and Samadin, or the Iraqi, are factual questions, or true-false questions, or finish the sentence. But to get at meaning, because that's the thing I want to focus on, is you have to ask why questions. Why do you think he was unpopular? Well, people want to go to the theater to be entertained, not to be criticized. So see if the students can find the answers to those questions in the text. Next slide. Okay. In the third paragraph, it says Shaw wrote 5 novels, but nobody would publish them. So then he began to write plays. And so, because he had to make a living, he wanted to be a writer. So he wanted to popularize his ideas about the upper class. So once a person is in an audience and has to watch a play, you may not like it, although in English audiences, if the people don't like the play, they just walk out, which Americans consider rude, but it does happen. So there's a phrase in the reading, road to success was difficult. So you have to say to the students, why was he had a hard time? Because people don't always like to be criticized in public. So you have to pull this out of the students. Next slide. Okay, new idea. So far I've talked about using pictures to help students have a context for the reading. The other kind of activity for students to understand the order of things is in the previous reading, there was the main idea of the whole thing about George Bernard Shaw was an English writer in the late 19th century, and he was an example of critical realism. Okay. So you can put one of the paragraphs from the text on the board, but make the sentences in a jumbled order, and then students have to pick the main idea and have to work in pairs and put them in correct order. Next slide. Okay, and when you do this, because it's hard when you have to figure out which is the correct order, tell the students, look for the transitions which show change or result or cause and effect. Phrases like as a consequence, as a result, first, second, those kinds of words. These are transition words and they show order. Next slide. Okay, here's an activity. on chat, I want you to put which is the first, which is the second. I don't put like number 1 is which sentence, number 2, number 3, number 4. Okay. Sator, okay. Firuz, I can see you. You unfortunately, okay, Firuz, can you guess which is the first sentence of this paragraph? Firuz. Unmute your speaker. Okay. Okay. Nasiba has the first discovery was that wheat could be prepared for use by grinding. Okay, that's number 1. Now, see these transitions, the first discovery, so you can figure out that's the first sentence. Then, what's the next one?
Maybe because wheat is very hot, they gradually discovered.
Okay, okay, that's the next one.
Yes.
But wait a minute, before you say that, wheat was very hard. What about people began consuming wheat by chewing it raw? Because in other words, the topic is about the origin of bread, which, okay. Yes, people began consuming it raw.
By chewing it in raw?
Then because wheat is very hard, they
very
discovered,
hard. Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes, and the last one, the results.
The results, it should be
Would
have been.
Yes.
My typo. Okay.
That's okay.
Yeah, this is a good activity. Actually, it would have been helpful if I had put the paragraph comes about the origin of wheat. That's one of your handouts, by the way. I made this handout for you and with these blanks, and I jumbled the sentences around. So you can use this as activity. And you should do this also before you make the kids close their books and write 4 sentences from the text on the board in jumbled order and make them put them in correct order, because then they read carefully the ideas expressed in the sentence, in the paragraph. Okay, and the other thing that you're teaching is the importance of the topic sentence in a paragraph. It's not emphasized enough, and this is what helps kids understand meaning. Next paragraph. Excuse me, next slide. Okay, making predictions, teach guessing. Don't ask them to give you the correct answer all the time. Let them use their imagination. Yes, that's true. What I'm saying to you are in the textbooks. Do you use them, Firuz? Firuz? Okay, good. Sentence starters help students, I think that they will decide. And looking at pictures, I predict these people will have. Next. Okay. So gives instructions in English. Don't ask students to read and retell. This is a summary. Making predictions, asking students the main idea of the essay. One of the things that I typed early in the chat room is for students who probably are at the beginning. I'm not talking necessarily at high school level, but for people who are teaching middle school level, there are English children's books online. Okay, I've finished this PowerPoint. Can you put me online, just my face, because I want to show some. We'll talk about reading strategies that they use in a minute. I want to show them some things. I didn't put this in the presentation because I got this idea afterwards, but I would encourage, see if you can see this. This is Stregonona, and it's a picture book. You can find this book, I think, online if you Google it. The author is Tommy Diapola. If you have middle school kids who are just learning this, I'm going to show you 3 picture books. And remember how pictures tell the story, even if they can't read all the words. You point to the pictures in the book and you have the kids learn a story, because a lot of the text and the things that I've been talking about are suggestions for reading in the English textbook, but sometimes it gets a bit boring. So I'm encouraging you to go online and look for children's books. I put this in The Giving Tree. When I first came to Tajikistan 20 years ago, I used this book, and I even have the name of a teacher that wrote in it. So this is a very popular book. It's online. It has a video that goes with it, and it's wonderful for middle school and young children. They can follow the video. So the other thing, my message is not just about high school reading, but getting the students to be comfortable with nonfiction and with children's books that are in English. Another book that's online is this Very Hungry Caterpillar. And it's a lovely book, very simple, that children who are learning about seasons and colors, and it's about how a caterpillar turns into a butterfly. If you Google Very Hungry Caterpillar, you'll get the video for young children, and there's a lot of supplementary activities. So even though my basic idea was about reading for high school students and how to use pictures and that sort of thing, I'm also encouraging you to work with children's book. Yes, somebody is saying it's a great book for children. Yes. So if you don't know about them, you should. The Very Hungry Caterpillar and The Giving Tree. These are both on the internet. Okay, so let's hear from you. I'm a little bit behind time, but let's hear from you about the strategies. Type to me, yes, wow, it's intended for children. Yes, this one, yes, this is really good for younger children. And the teachers in Tajikistan always write to me like it's Earth Day or Environmental Protection Day. And this is a good book, this Giving Tree, for environmental activities. And when I was in Georgia, the teachers did lesson plans around this book. The text is very simple. The pictures are very simple if you look at it. And it's a story of a young boy and a tree. And so one of the characters dressed up as a tree and another was the young boy, and they got older. And it tells a wonderful story on many different levels. So if you're looking for, yes, Firuz, yes. Okay, this is a good story for Earth Day. Any other strategies? Parvina is asking, can you write the author of The Giving Tree is Shel Silverstein? Okay. And you know what? This book is written on many levels. So even though it's simple for younger children, it's an allegory, and it has many meanings. I read it to teachers, and I'll never forget. I read it to English teachers in Tajikistan 18 years ago, and they came up with a completely different meaning than I had interpreted. And so that's why I like this book. Depending on your audience, people see different things. So this one is a story about a young boy, and he gets a hold of the magic potion of Stregonona. Stregonona in Italian means old witch, and what happens to him about his curiosity. So okay, so okay, so okay, remember the play performed by students? Yes, it was very nice. Oh yes, okay, good. So if you haven't tried The Giving Tree for this Earth Day, it's a good one to reenact. And even if and frankly, if you have new students each year, you can do the same play. It's a very good play. You can split the characters up because there's only 3 or 4 characters in here. And this one, if you are doing like science and English, you can use this book for how a caterpillar changes into a butterfly, but also it talks about what he eats. He eats a strawberry, he eats an orange. So you're talking about colors and the things that he eats. So it's a good book for naming things. This is really more for younger kids. Okay, I want to hear about, okay, so I talked a little bit about children's books. In your handouts, you know, I gave you the paragraph about grinding wheat and the origin of bread. I gave you the whole text and I jumbled it up for you. That's I took that reading from a TOEFL preparation book. If you're looking for advanced reading for students, you can get good texts from these preparation books. If you're just working on tips for reading comprehension. Anything else? I'd like to hear about your strategies. Yes.
Dear Judith, thank you very, very much for a wonderful presentation. So many people just jumped in with their comments, with responding to your questions and by sharing their comments. We have a couple of questions I would like to cover.
Yes.
So Parvina Sodiqova is asking, can you recommend for something for intermediate level, some books for intermediate level?
Intermediate level?
Yes.
In English?
Oh. Yeah.
Oh. Right now, off the top of my head, I can't, but if I send it to you, if I make up a list, because I wasn't prepared for English literature, novels. And that's why I asked, does anybody use fiction? I didn't hear any responses, but I hear that you want them, and I will, I'll look up a series of titles, and I'll send them to you, Masiba, and you can put them on the internet. Yeah, I have to do some research on that.
Excellent, excellent. Yes, we'll be just posting all the handout materials as well as your presentation
Okay.
on our website, and also the list you will provide us for the reading, materials for intermediate level. That would be perfect. Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay. Somebody said you can use English Club. They are adapted books. Okay. One of the things that okay. Can you explain concepts like realism or expressionism during reading classes with students who are not aware of these terms? It needs extra time to introduce these concepts. Can we manage our time? To be quite frank, it's more important that they understand the terms that they're used, that are being discussed in the piece of writing, because they won't understand the concept of what George Bernard Shaw was writing about. You have to explain realism. It doesn't have to be that long. And the function of reading is to get the bigger picture. So yes, I do think, how can we manage our time? So you take two lessons to do this. It's the yes, I would take extra time. Absolutely. If you don't understand the idea of critical realism, then you don't understand George Bernard Shaw. Okay, the other thing I mentioned is graphic novels. I think you should Google online graphic novels, because this is my grandson is reading a graphic novel. It's it's a picture book, but it dramatizes the text. And I have to look it up. It's in my bedroom, but I don't remember the title. And so there are a lot, and I'll make a list of graphic novels. You might be able to get some of them online, because it'd be a way of seeing the picture and reading the text. I have to say that it's a very new form, and I would encourage students to make up their own graphic novels of stories that they have in their head, to draw pictures. Even young children can do this. American children at a very early age, like in the 5th, 6th grade, draw pictures and then write a little short text, 2 sentences. My grandson did it, and it's a very popular thing. So they are published in Russia. The graphic novels are the adapted. You know what? I know this adapted. There's no pictures in it, and I think pictures are important to kids. Mrs. Elliott, thank you. Oh, yes. Okay, but Parvina. I'm working with Parvina and Gulnora at Hujan State, also Dillafruz and Nazira on a writing project. And we are doing reading and writing, and it's working out very well.
Yeah.
I'm very observant of the time. It is 10 o'clock here, and I don't want to run over.
Yeah.
If you have more questions, send them to the website, and I'll be willing to work on that. And I'm going to work on a list of I know exactly what you're looking for, and I just, off the top of my head, I don't have them. Okay, thank you very much also for joining us.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
a huge thank you to you, Judy, for such exciting and interesting presentation. So we can see that people got engaged, and they just will also be sending their questions. We invite everybody to join our forum on our website, www.ewb.tj. Please join, and we are going to open a forum based on today's webinar topic. So, and you can ask and just put your comments, ask questions there. So please go to our website. I'll be sharing our website there. Please join it and go to forum discussion. You'll be able to see everything there. So thank you again. And I'm just going to wrap up and wish everyone to have a good evening. Thank you for joining us, the participants on Facebook and on via Zoom. And thanks a lot once again, dear Judy, for your volunteering at the EBB webinar and making such an interesting presentation. Thank you. And hope to see you. Hope to see you again.
It was my pleasure.
Yes, hope to see everybody again on our next webinar next Thursday. Please stay tuned on our website.